Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. Today our presentation is Using Curriculum Mapping to Your Advantage, Strategies for Better Assessment. Our hosts today are Dr. Jane Souza, Assistant Dean of Assessment for St. John Fisher College, Wegman School of Pharmacy, and Mr. Patrick Chad, Acting Associate Director, University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey School of Osteopathic Medicine. Dr. Souza settled in Rochester at the Wegman School of Pharmacy after a long career as a higher education administrator in Massachusetts. She served as a Chief Academic Officer, Executive Director of a 6-college consortium, as well as an accreditation team member for the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and presently for Middle States Commission on Higher Education. Unfortunately, Mr. Chad had a last-minute schedule conflict and will not be able to join us today. Dr. Souza will be presenting on his material in addition to her own. If you have specific questions, we encourage everyone to type them in the chat feature of this webinar at any time. To pose a question to the presenter, please click on the questions feature of the GoToWebinar area, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen, and type it in the box provided. All questions will be addressed at the conclusion of the presentation. Also, just as a heads up, all attendees will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recorded version of the webinar, as well as a copy of the presentation itself. We also would love feedback on our webinar series and encourage everyone to fill out a quick survey that will pop up for you at the conclusion of the webinar. As a reminder, we have another highly anticipated webinar next Wednesday, March 13th, entitled From Coal Miners to Data Miners, Successfully Onboarding Faculty to Educational Technology, hosted by Mr. Brad Markham, Director of Academic Data Services at the University of Pikeville, Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine. Full details and the registration page can be found at learn.examsoft.com/webinar. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Dr. Souza. Thank you so much for attending, and please enjoy the webinar.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I'll look for the presentation to be handed over. And thank you, everyone, for joining me today. I do want to make my apologies to all of you for Chad, Patrick Chad. He was really looking forward to joining us today. Unfortunately, a schedule prevented him from doing so. I am not having the control over the webinar that I anticipated. Aha, here it is. Okay. Some of you perhaps may have attended. I know a couple of people have talked to me. You've attended other webinars before with a similar topic. This will have a little bit different focus, and I think the information that is added with Patrick Chad is going to be hopefully beneficial for everyone. I wanted to start with the curriculum mapping. Forgive me if this is something that everyone is very much aware of, and you know why do we do curriculum mapping, but I think it's relevant to start here and really look at the foundation of what it is that we get the basic benefit from the curriculum mapping exercises that no doubt all of us do on our campuses. First of all, we're tracking the alignment of the goals of our program. At the institutional level, we're articulating program goals and aligning them through this map. We're looking at the program goals to inform individual courses, and then we're looking at those course goals to inform the individual learning outcomes that is, of course, showing up in our syllabi. Then again, we're using these curriculum maps to document the alignment for accreditation purposes. You notice I put that second and not first. We use the curriculum maps for us first. And by the way, they also serve our accrediting agencies. But I like to keep the locus of control on the campus. We're doing this for us. It's great that it's also something that the accrediting agencies like to see. We're also providing learning roadmaps for the students. So if they saw the curriculum map, and I hope they do, is that they can see, well, here's the progression, here's where we plan to take you and where we expect you to go during your time with us. So many of you may have similar strategies, looking at first institutional goals, and those again inform the programmatic, and then to the course level, and of course the learning objectives that appear in the course syllabi. What that might look like is when you start doing the alignment. Now this is a quote from an institutional goal taken off the web. So our institution engages individuals in lives of intellectual inquiry. Now that probably can be found in many institutions. So that's a fundamental concept that at the program level, someone might say provide students with knowledge, skills, and abilities to become whatever, in our case, a qualified pharmacist. At the Wegman School of Pharmacy. And a course goal might be, well, this course examines the hierarchical organization of the human body and goes on from there. The point I want to make about this is anytime you state a goal, you put that up on your website, you publish that in your literature. Right now, in this environment of accountability, we're pretty much, it's fair game for anybody to call on you and say, okay, show me, how do you fulfill these goals? How are you demonstrating that you're meeting those goals? So anything you articulate and you post, this is our goal, someone can come back on you and say, okay, how are you doing on it? Give me a report. How, what's the progress? Demonstrate some evidence. So where is that evidence? Is the map really taking you anywhere? I can have this beautiful map of saying all my program goals are beautifully aligned, but how do I know where the students are on that map? How are they progressing? And I really think the evidence is in the assessments that you do along the way. Traditional assessments, some of it performance-based assessments, whether they're rubrics or they're traditional exam-type questions. If you look at that evidence, that's going to really say how the students are doing along that map and how the institution is doing in meeting its goals and objectives. So if you mind the assessment, you can actually close the assessment loop, that elusive assessment loop. Because if you look at just what's on the map, the documentation of teaching as it's presented on the map is not documentation of student learning. Just because you taught it, just because it's in your syllabus and then you have this beautiful map, doesn't mean that the students are learning it and they're progressing and moving along that trail. So what is the loop? And that comes up again. And I really like the loop as described in the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. If you look at their standards, they really describe this really nicely, I think. It starts with developing clearly articulated learning outcomes. So this is what I'm going to teach. And then following, we design experiences that provide opportunities to achieve those outcomes. So that's how I'm going to teach. And then assessing the student learning outcomes, that's okay, I'm double checking what did the students learn, and then finally using the results of the assessment to improve the teaching and learning, and maybe redefining some of those learning outcomes. So that's where the loop or the circle is closed. I really like particularly this part because I'm saying that the assessments are as much for teaching as they are for learning. And it brings us all into that assessment conversation, the faculty, the administration, and the students alike as being partners in this roadmap we're going through. So having said that, our old curriculum map used to look something like this. If I took a little snapshot from it, I would say we have a learning outcome having to do with the cardiovascular system and the respiratory and the gastrointestinal and renal, neurological and psychological, and it will go on from there, obviously. So I have these learning outcomes, and then I list courses down the side, and then I put in X wherever I cover them. Actually, this little X box is this is what it would be if I looked at my fall curriculum right now. What did we cover in what courses, and what does this tell me? Well, it's nice it tells me the density of some of this coverage. I covered these learning outcomes in cardio. I know I hit it in 4 different courses. That's really good to see. Gastro is only in 1, and that's okay. Well, did we do that in the spring? Where did that appear? So it shows me what to watch for. So I can certainly get a fair amount of information from this. But again, it's not telling me what the students are learning. It's just saying, okay, here's where I'm covering it. And this is material from our fall, in a curriculum map. And I took those same learning outcomes, and now I married it to some longitudinal data that I collected through ExamSoft, actually. And I say, look at cardio here. I have 21 exams asked questions about the cardio system. There are 119 items within those exams. The group average for that was 80.68%, and these are all the courses that contributed to those exams. So I have the same information that I had before, but a whole lot more to go with it. And the most important thing there for me, of course, is how did the students do. So I'm, just analyzing this tiny little snapshot. I can see, all right, the gastrointestinal system was only hit in one course. Again, I can see that, 84. That's right about where we want our average to be. I like it to be somewhere between maybe 82 and 85% for a class average. So what does this tell me about renal? Okay, we're at 78% in renal. Now, if I look at the spring, and I know we're going to cover that again quite a bit, and that percentage is still pretty low, it's going to make me look back at the questions that were asked and look at the courses and say, gee, what can we do? And remember, closing the loop, I'll start looking at the assessments, and I will look at what brought us there and say, okay, do we have enough learning activities? Do we have enough teaching activities? Are we engaging in active learning strategies? What could we be doing better? So as much as I'd be informing the students about ways to progress, I'll be informing us. We need to look at ourselves and what can we do better. So this is where we're at with our curriculum map now. So how do we leverage that new evidence-based curriculum map? Well, for the accrediting agencies, what we're doing is we're documenting student performance on the assessment of the learning outcomes on our map. We're also documenting the density of our curriculum coverage. Is this something we just hit in one course, one semester, or is it something that actually is traveling longitudinally across the curriculum? For the students, and you'll see a couple of example reports in a few moments, we're highlighting the areas of strengths and weaknesses for the students so they can really get a good sense of how they're doing. And we use this for academic advising and remediation. For example, we're coming up to midterm pretty soon. At the end of midterm, each of the students will get a longitudinal report saying, here's how you did on all the learning objectives that we have identified, or the learning outcomes we've identified. Now you go online and write a reflection of your strengths and weaknesses and what you're going to do to address your weaknesses. And putting that in their ballpark has them take a look at what they're doing, where some of them don't know they have these weaknesses until you really give them this individualized report. And I like the idea of having them reflect on it and take some responsibility for a plan of action. At the program level, we can make data decisions to support continuous improvement. And again, that's that closing the loop. And for the faculty, I have to tell you, there's a whole lot of teaching and learning scholarship going on. People looking at their assessment data, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move along. We're using ExamSoft to mine the data because, as you can imagine, when you're giving all of these exams, we're giving, how many exams did I say that we're giving 100 exams in a semester, and then how do we pull all the information out to say what's the density of coverage in every single learning outcomes? Well, we use ExamSoft to do that. What we do is put every single one of our exam questions in the test bank within ExamSoft, and then we code it according to Bloom's taxonomy. We use knowledge, application, and synthesis levels. We categorize it, and how we put it into a category, we do system, we'll do actually accreditation standards, and we'll also match them to individual course learning outcomes. So we tag all of our questions in multiple ways. Then the students go on the computer and they take their exams in the computer environment, not online, but the exams themselves are sitting on the laptops after they've downloaded them onto their computers. And when they've completed their exam, they will come back onto the net and upload the questions back through the internet. And we'll have this wonderful mountain of information that we can then dissect and analyze and say, oh, doesn't this feed our curriculum map in a really pretty powerful way? And then the analysis is the fun part for me. I'm just having a ball playing with the analysis, and it's not just me. I'm the Dean of Assessment here, but it's amazing how much the faculty are going in and pulling out the information. And one of my faculty was in my office yesterday and said, can you put all of my learning outcomes in there? They're not in there now, and I want to categorize each and every one because I'm trying a new method starting this semester, and I want to see what the scores are per learning outcome, and be able to look at to ensure that I've covered all of the learning outcomes, but then to see movement on how the students are doing. She also wants to capture that and put it in a dossier because she happens to be going up for promotion and tenure next year. Of course, one of the things is demonstrate effectiveness in teaching. Now, if she has all her learning outcomes there articulated, and she can demonstrate how the students are learning when she teaches them, that's pretty nice evidence to put in a dossier. So we're coding the assessments in ExamSoft. So let me just quickly show you what this looks like. For us, our Appendix B is a guideline provided by our accrediting agency. And so we have an Appendix B, 01 is Anatomy of Physiology, 2 is Pathophysiology, etc. And then within each of these, we're breaking them down even further according to, again, these are accreditation standards. Now, in this same way, we categorize by Bloom's taxonomy and learning outcomes. What I just did these screenshots to show you something. As we were building them, and these are screenshots from, I believe, over the summer, as faculty were building questions and coding them, this populates with a number. So I know there are 78 questions right now dealing with materials and methods in bioanalysis and clinical chemistry. So you can see these numbers and you can watch them grow. And just looking at that gives you kind of a sense of where your curriculum is going. What I have found is faculty test what they teach, right? So what they're covering in the classroom is what they build their exams on. So that's a pretty good picture of what is being taught in the lectures and what is being taught in the case studies and the labs that we're doing. So right now, this, as I said, this is not a current screenshot. We have currently over 5,000 questions in this ExamSoft test bank. The numbers are quite high, and it's really nice to see them growing all the time as our faculty are contributing to that test bank. So what do we get out of this afterwards? As I said, the students are taking what they don't need to take it on the computer. I know some of my colleagues are using Scantron and taking the Scantron and then importing that into the ExamSoft system so that they can get this kind of learning analytics out of it. This is a little hard to see. I know I was trying to fit the whole thing on the screen so it's small. But from a student perspective, let's say they're taking this exam and you can give them a very quick screenshots showing this particular student score is 81.3 on the exam. The class average was 79.7, so they know they're doing pretty well in relation to the class average. These little spots over here, green, yellow, and red, what that is doing is telling them how they're doing in relation to their peers in each of the individual categories. So, for example, in abnormal processes over here, I've got a yellow. That's warning. That means I'm falling just a little bit below the class average here. So if I'm in dark blue and the class average is in light blue, I'm falling a little bit below the class average. And over here in red, I'm falling more below the class average. So you can see in green, I'm way above the class average. So the student can get a very quick snapshot how I'm doing. Obviously, you can give them much more detail than this. But if you wanted to just give a really quick snapshot of what they were doing in each of the areas covered in your exam, this is a pretty nice report for them to get, which is pushed out at the pretty quickly with a click of a button. I really like that part of it. The faculty, from their perspective, can get a really similar shot to look at their exam. So in this exam performance, you're seeing a high score of 99%, low of 63, class average of 86. And again, much like what you saw in what you saw with the students, I'm seeing the high, the median, and the low for every question type or for every classification or category that I have articulated in this exam. Also a quick performance, you'll get a histogram of what's going on. This, the faculty really like. At-risk students, they see the bottom 27% of their students and what their scores are. That's really nice because we do exam reviews after exams, and so we can say to these students, you know, you really need to come to the exam review. You can't let this stand because our knowledge is cumulative, everything is cumulative. We need to address this. So you know where to spend your time with the students. The individual question performance, too, is something we're looking at more and more. If you look at the descriptive statistics there, we look at the point by serials and the performance of the distractors for our questions. We are engaging in peer review of test items right now. Our goal is to get through our whole bank of over, I think, 4,000 plus questions right now in the next 2 to 3 years, where in the past, only the people that saw their exam questions were the faculty who created them. With now they're in this shared test bank, we can get together, and we've already started having meetings where a content expert, a non-content expert, and the item creator comes together and looks at the item, checks it for clarity, for typographical errors, for the accuracy in the coding, for the categories, and just is it appropriate for the learning outcome for that class and at the right level. So we're taking the input very, very seriously, so it's nice to have this snapshot of the item performance to watch along the way. So what are we getting out of this? This is from this past fall. So reading this, Bloom's taxonomy, as I said, we don't cover the whole 6. We break it down into knowledge, application, and synthesis that works for us. So we did professional development sessions and training faculty how to classify their questions. And we see here that in the fall there were 38 exams that had knowledge-based questions. There were 34 that had application questions and only 16 that had synthesis questions. The number of items, 530, 268, and 20, it shows us that, again, this is formative assessment for us. We really want more than 2% of our questions in our item bank to be at the synthesis level. So this was in the fall, and we're challenging ourselves to bring that up in the spring, recognizing right now that these are basic questions. Let's say they include true and false, fill in the blank, multiple choice, and essays. So we'll be adding the rubrics in the fall, and that will get us more into performance assessment and much more into the synthesis. So we recognize that a lot of our curriculum right now isn't in the tests, it's in the performance and the rubrics. We'll be using those in ExamSoft come this fall, and I think that's going to make a dramatic change in our curriculum map. So I'm really anxious to see how that progresses. The group average, this is what we would expect to see. The students are scoring best at the knowledge base, a little bit less with application, a little bit less with synthesis. Again, I'm not happy with the N here, and I show this to the faculty every month. Okay, here's where we are when we have our monthly faculty meetings. The faculty are telling me we want critical thinkers. We want the students to be able to be critical thinkers. So let's push them a little bit in this synthesis area. Here again, here's some sample student longitudinal data that I put together just to give you a screenshot. Here I put in cardiorespiratory, GI, renal, and neuro. Well, at this point in time when I took this shot, we had this is the number of exams that cover this and the number of questions. And at that point in time, I could see there were high points, 92.9% correct in respiratory. So that's pretty good over here versus 80.9% in renal. And actually, since I've looked at this many times after this, the renal is consistently in the lower range. And how does that bear out at the individual student level? Well, here's a student. Again, this is real data at this point in time this was probably after the, let's say, I think after about the third exam in the fall. This student had 83% in knowledge, 82% in application, 100% on the synthesis questions, 100% cardio, 100% respiratory, but look what happened in renal. So now imagine, once we have the 3 years worth of data in here, for the student, if that renal is persistent, now our pharmacy students are going to take board exams at the end for licensure. It's called the NAPLEX for pharmacy. And imagine they have a report at the end of the 3 years, and it shows them all their areas of strength and weakness. Well, where are they going to spend their time studying for the board exams? Well, obviously, this student at this process is going to be spending a lot of time on renal. But in the meantime, we can suggest, when the student writes a reflection, I'm still weak in renal, here's what I'm going to do about it, then the faculty advisor can write back, well, I recommend this reading, or talk to this person, or this study group. So we can try to obviously remediate along the way and not let this weakness persist. What was really interesting, and I looked at one student who had about a 90+ average all the way through her time so far, and in all of her exams she had these 90s, consistently in the 90s, but when I did a longitudinal report on her, everywhere where there were calculations, so in any course where calculations popped up, the calculation course question percentage was in the 70s. So here we have this 90 student who has an obvious weakness in calculations. I never would have spotted that before because I would just look at the whole exam and not break it down to the individual questions. Now I'm looking at the questions longitudinally across all the courses the student is taking and the categories wherever it comes up, and I can see where those weaknesses are. So just as the larger map showed us where the weaknesses are in our curriculum, this is helping the students show the weaknesses on their progression. So now getting back to that map, now I know how we're doing along the way on the map. So summarizing these advantages of leveraging this curriculum mapping data, at the standards level, we're documenting addressing specific accreditation and departmental standards. Not just that we're addressing them, but how the students are doing as we address them. So once departmental learning outcomes are identified, not only do we say, here's the density of coverage, but here's how the students are doing. At the learning outcomes level, we're documenting the depth of the coverage as well as the density in identifying the learning outcomes right at the course level. As I said, we have faculty who are saying, I have 8 learning outcomes for my class. I categorize each of my questions to the learning outcomes, and then I can look, boy, I really didn't put much emphasis on learning outcome number 7. I think I'm going to spend more time there. So the faculty are able to use this to document their coverage of their learning outcomes at the course level. At the student level, they're enabled, as I talked, to self-evaluate, look at their strengths and weaknesses. We can provide a remediation guide. One of the other things I wanted to point out, when you have this really large test bank and you have thousands of items in it, let's say a student is that has that weakness in renal, and you say, I want you to read this and this, and I want you to review these lectures that you had, and then I'm going to test you again in renal and see how you do. You can go to that test bank and just pull up only renal questions, and then create an exam just for that student on the fly with just renal questions, give it to them, and see how they do. So it's a really nice ability to use the learning analytics really to tailor your instruction and the remediation for students on an individual basis. And at the faculty level, this rich data source for scholarship of teaching and learning, As I said, right now I have several faculty who are experimenting with flipping the classroom. It's similar to what's going on in the Khan Academy, where they do these 10, 15-minute videos and they send them out to the students to learn, and then come into the classroom and address the strengths and weaknesses. They want to see, well, what's going to happen with the grades over time? What's going to happen with the learning of those, the numbers, the learning analytics, and the statistical data on those learning outcomes as I experiment and try new things? It's really nice to be able to dig deep into the data and sort it whatever way you want to. And all of the faculty have the ability to pull any of these longitudinal reports. I pulled an individual student longitudinal report at a faculty meeting recently to show them this is how long it takes. I think it took me 93 seconds, and I had a student's longitudinal report in front of them. So it's really accessible, it's easy to do, and it's so full of rich data for the students. And again, what I like about this is that locus of control of the data and manipulation of the data in order to pull it to get what we need stays with the faculty and stays with us. And by the way, yes, we can show it to the accrediting agency, but principally it's for us. It's to tell our story, document what we are doing, help us do better. So I really like the assessment to be focused on the people who are generating the data, and that's the faculty and the students. So now I'm going to move into Patrick Chad's area. He spent a lot of time really thinking about how he implemented this. So we have this great system. We have ExamSoft, but wow, it's a different way of doing things. So how do you get everybody on board, and how do you plan to have success in doing this? So he's come up with some strategies for success, and you know he's got much cooler PowerPoint presentation than I do. So now we're going into his area with these cool guys. I gotta get this. Anyway, the ExamSoft implementation plan. He makes a very good distinction between a work plan and an implementation plan. And the implementation one, it has a project management team that looks at the critical steps. How are we going to start this project? How are we going to create a guide to get there, and to be very proactive, not wait for things to happen, not be reactive, but really identify what the challenges are along the way. The implementation plans for ExamSoft, he said he did it very quickly. In about a month, he developed and finalized an implementation plan on his campus. Now, a work plan, different. It is an outline of all of the individual tasks that need to be completed in order to finish the project. I think he's right on with this. You have to think, you have to sweat the small stuff. You can't just look at the big picture. And a work plan will include a detailed schedule for all the members of your team and the tasks that they will all do. That is really important. I know we built a cadre of our super users, we call them, and our early adopters, and I think having them part of your work plan is huge, and they take ownership of it. And also you build the confidence that, okay, we're going to get through this because we've planned it. So the distinction Patrick is making in the implementation of the work plan here is the implementation will include a guide for implementing the whole project at your institution. It's planning the whole pilot and an overall time of the actions. Think very big picture, start to finish. Here's where we are, and here's where we're going to be 6 months from now, 1 year from now. The work plan, in contrast, is going to cover that period of implementation in easy steps, goals, strategies, objectives, measurements, timelines, how are we going to get there, and responsible parties attached to that. So he's absolutely so right, I believe, in the having a key administrator. That's an individual that's going to be the point person, the key person. He's different from, or she, from the other administrators. They have the primary point of communication with ExamSoft. They're going to take the lead on the project. I always say you need a champion. If something's going to be successful, any project I've ever seen that has had success has a champion. And yes, you want to grow to a whole an army of champions, but it will start with somebody leading the charge. And it's very important that you identify this person and then other administrators. On our campus, I will say, I'm the primary point person. I'm the ExamSoft champion, but then I don't want to be the only one that has all of this access. So I have a partner who I asked to be a co-administrator with me, and then we have all of these faculty members, and at the top of that is a group of faculty who I call our super users, who led the charge, who did the pilot, who are very much part of this work group, and we found our way to reward them, and actually they're the first ones to get publications out of their work. So training is a huge part of it. Once you have your plan in place, you have to make sure everyone gets trained. ExamSoft does have a whole library of webinars and videos and trainings on there. For our part, I found that the faculty like the one-on-one, they like the hands-on. We had group training sessions. So I said, everybody bring your laptop, come in, let's create questions together, let's do this together. And then again, when they got into doing their own exams for the first time, I always had my door open and said, come in, let me do your first exam with you. And so that builds up their confidence level. So during the implementation and training of your institutional staff, the key administrator and other administrators have to be the subject matter experts for ExamSoft. They're not necessarily the subject matter experts for the content. We're not saying that at all. Just they're the people who know how to use the system. So they want to be familiar both with functionality and troubleshooting. And I do want to say a word on troubleshooting. I'm actually this Friday scheduled to train 2 other people to just do technical troubleshooting when the students have issues with their computers, because, you know, we have 80 students in the class. They've got 80 types of computers, it seems, and all of them, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't download, I didn't, whatever. So we do want people in the room who know how to address the common student issues. So we're creating a little team of people who are our troubleshooting team. I think that's a good way to go. I like what Patrick said here, practice, be the expert. Once trained, practice, practice, practice with all the applications within ExamSoft, so that you're very familiar with each application and what the suite does. That is really important. And to have those super users at the beginning who enjoy using technology, who enjoy going in and playing with things and experimenting and pushing the bar. Fortunately, at our campus, we have those faculty who are just loving this, who are eating it up. And you have them, they become the experts, and then they're training their colleagues, they're assisting them, and it just radiates out from there. So it's that idea of building the confidence in the faculty and staff to have the smooth implementation of ExamSoft. So what happens when you meet resistance? Well, apparently Patrick did experience faculty resistance. They initially had strong faculty resistance, and they discovered that they were switching to computer-based exams from a traditional paper-based. And I do want to say a couple of things about this. Change is difficult for many people, and in any setting. Where we experienced the most resistance, surprisingly, didn't come from the faculty. It came from the students. They wanted paper, they wanted to doodle, they wanted to write, they wanted to. So, you know, we end up giving scrap paper to them at the beginning, you know, or particularly if they're doing calculations. We let them use scrap paper, and we picked it up afterwards. But moving into a computer environment where the students are not filling in bubbles and writing down, instead they're on their laptops or in a computer lab taking the exam. Initially, you probably will face some resistance. If it doesn't come from the faculty, it might surprise you, as it did me, and come from the students. So Patrick suggests to alleviate the faculty concerns, be prepared and have a demonstration with ExamSoft and explain exactly what's going to happen. It's user-friendly. It requires a minimal amount of training. I have to say, it's very intuitive. faculty won't be required to spend their time creating exams over and over and over again. You know, the nice thing, once you put your questions in the test bank, they sit there and they wait for you until you're ready to use them again. So you're not constantly running off all of these exams with multiple versions and everything else. You can categorize your exam questions, and you can generate robust longitudinal reports and to assess the student performance. Faculty, when you start showing them some of the longitudinal data, they're going to say, wow, okay, I get it now. But what do you do before you have any of that longitudinal data to present? You really have to project out and say, this is what you're going to have, and train them and show them examples. So it allows them to contribute their questions into a multidisciplinary exam, which is really, really nice. So now, let's say, again, you have questions in the test bank, and you're having a cumulative, you want to give a cumulative test. You don't have to just stick with the questions that are in your particular class. We actually code questions as cumulative as well. So if there's something that students should just plain know, for example, not memorize after your lecture, but they should have internalized this. This is a key concept. That goes into the cumulative bucket for the semester in which it was taught. And anybody can go back into that cumulative file and say, hey, you know, I'm going to pull that back, make sure the students remember this. And you can go into that across disciplines, across semesters, across courses, to really get the students to understand that they don't learn things in silos from one course to another, that everything builds on everything else. So that's a really nice thing to reassure faculty with, I think. Then, as Patrick so rightly states, we need faculty assistance. I love that little life raft there. It's really cute. So faculty on his campus were really assured initially that their existing exam questions would be migrated into ExamSoft, and they could start using them the first day. It was available by creating and delivering exams. So maybe he had someone input the questions for the faculty. On our campus, the faculty are putting them in themselves, but whatever method you use, you got to add support, add assistance, let them know so they feel confident in what they're doing. He also assured the faculty they'd always have local support in the building, not 2 buildings away, but in the building, delivering and supporting the exams. So, oh my goodness, I forgot how to do this multiple choice. I forgot how to grade an essay. I forgot how to do this. If they can walk down the hall and find somebody who has those answers, and that's your cadre of super users, then there's more confidence, and they're feeling, okay, I don't have to go through all kind of gyrations to get some help and get my questions answered. I have people right here who can assist me. So once the questions are in the bank and the faculty, in this case, he's saying the faculty department administrator created the exams. So you certainly can go in that direction. They did. For us, if we have a course that is taught by multiple faculty members, they're all contributing to one course, then we have a coordinator who builds the exams. If you're teaching the course on your own, well, then you would build the exam. So it can change, and what's nice is you have that flexibility. Anyone can be the one designated to create the exam. So providing faculty support resources, incredibly important. He says we also ensure the faculty and the staff who created, delivered, and proctored the exams that they would have numerous levels of support. So they had local support in the building for delivering the exams and using ExamSoft, and they provided faculty with support for development and training from the local ExamSoft support team. We do have people we can call there at any time, and receive ongoing support from a designated ExamSoft account manager, a customer service team. And we do have that. I have a name to call. I call that person when I have a question. I want to try something different. I don't know what I'm doing. So that help button, as that little guy is pushing, it is valuable. The faculty need to be assured that the support resources are there. Now I'm going to say on our campus, it was the students who needed that support and reassurance. It's so funny, they're young, and I thought they would adapt more readily to change, boy, are they married to their paper and pencil, which is so ironic because if they're not talking to you, they're on their iPhones. So they're living in the electronic world, and then you ask them to take an exam in it, and all of a sudden they want their paper. I found that ironic. It did surprise me. So everything we're saying here for faculty, you'll also have to apply for the students. They need the support, the assistance, knowing that you're there. We have multiple people in the room. Our typical exam would go like this. The exam's going to start at 9 o'clock. At 10 of, I've got somebody in the room who's ready to assist the students if they have any trouble. My super technical help people are there maybe for the first 10 minutes of the exam to make sure everybody's up and running, and then they go away. And then, of course, we have the usual proctors in the room. What is nice about giving an exam in the computerized environment is that if you randomize your questions, we have 80 students in a room. We have, let's say, 70 questions to an exam. There are 80 different exams in the room because not only do we randomize the questions, but in a multiple choice question itself, we randomize the answers within the multiple choice. So it kind of makes it really hard to cheat. So we have that. We create this secure environment. We monitor, we proctor it. No one leaves the room until they've finished the exam and they've shown us that they've closed out the exam. So we're really feeling good about the integrity of the exam, which is really something that faculty care a lot about as well. So on Patrick's campus, they have the full-time faculty who teach full-time, and they basically create and deliver their own exams. He does provide on-site support in the event there are any issues, but other than that, the faculty administrate their own ExamSoft exams and functions by themselves. And that is true here, except as said in the case when there is a course taught by multiple people, then we have a coordinator who pulls all the exam questions in from the people contributing to the exam, and then one person launches the exam. He has clinical faculty, as do I, and we have clinical faculty and clinical volunteer faculty, and they have access to ExamSoft to create their own questions. So this is web-based. Let me make the clarification there. When you're building an exam and you're building your test bank item, you're building it on the server at ExamSoft, and it's web-based, so you can do it from your clinic, from your classroom, from your home. When the students take the exam, it's resident on their computer because they download the exam, it sits on their computer, they take it offline on their computer, and then they put their answers back up through the net online again. But when the faculty are working in this, they're building this in a web-based environment. So they have access from anywhere. So if you have adjunct faculty who are in the clinic who came in and lectured for an hour in your class or two, and you want to have them contribute exam questions, they can do that. These clinical faculty, then they flag their questions for the respective exams and for which they're created, and they're delivered by the exam administrator on the date of the exam. Again, in those cases, he provides ExamSoft on-site support in case there are any issues. So there's a great deal of flexibility built in here. So then I know Patrick did a pilot, as we did. They had a pilot for ExamSoft and a clerkship that went for a full year at the request of the academic dean, and where an exam was given every single week. The pilot was a great success. Everybody gets feeling good about it. They had director support, real-life experience, and it did much to bolster the faculty confidence and the acceptance and the support for ExamSoft and the move to this computer-based environment. He said for low-stakes quizzes as well as the high-stakes quizzes and secure exams that mimicked their board exams. And I want to say just a little bit about that. Part of our plan, our work plan for this, was to pilot. And then when we went to live to full-blown into every single exam being given in the ExamSoft environment, I really encouraged, first of all, mock exams. I sent out a silly exam with, like, who's the dean of the school and who's his administrative assistant and all this other stuff that didn't count for anything, but it enabled people to get into the environment and try it out. and then also have low-stakes exams at the beginning. Last summer, we had a hybrid law course that was running, and I really encourage the faculty member to give a lot of low-stakes exams. They don't have to count for much, maybe 5 points. Have them, oh, you're going to have an ExamSoft quiz tonight at home. Take it on your own time. It's only worth 5 points. 5 questions, 5 points. So the students are used to going in, taking a question, taking an exam. Oh, okay, you know, the sky doesn't fall because I'm working in a computerized environment. I really encourage the low stakes, and it sounds like Patrick did that as well, low stakes leading up to high stakes. It builds the confidence and getting comfortable with the environment itself. So then after you've had the pilot and you've done all this and you go live, at the conclusion of his pilot during the summer, ExamSoft was rolled out for the incoming first-year medical students. So he did it in a phased way. And then with only one ExamSoft administrator at every exam with the proctor, they had a 100% success rate in the delivery of secure high-stakes exams during the first year of medical school implementation. And based on that success, they added the second, the third, and the fourth-year medical students to ExamSoft the following year with no additional support resources, and they were happy to say they finished another successful year of delivering exams with ExamSoft. So this is a really nice plan they had worked out, and it sounds like it went very smoothly for them. And I think he would attribute it to his implementation plan and his work plan. They laid it out. They knew what they were going to do from start to finish. We did a similar thing, and we started with piloting, and we did it piloting with 2 faculty who were really charged up about doing this. And 2 faculty in their courses, 2 courses over a spring semester. And then over the summer, we did a lot of training and support and spent the summer really building the test bank item, training the faculty, assisting them with building their first exams, their first imports of questions, etc. And then in the fall, we went live 100%, all our classes. So we did a deep dive off the deep end of the pool. But it has worked well for us because I got very excited, as our faculty did, about having a good complete map, and I figured I wasn't going to have a good map until everybody had their exam questions in there. So we did a little bit differently, but similar progression, and happily with the same outcome, that it's moving well. We have gone to a laptop requirement, so this year's incoming students were required to have a laptop. So next year, our second-year students, it'll be the first and second year, so eventually all of our students will have the laptop. I will say that we did take an inventory of the students before we started this process, and I would say 90 to 95% of them had laptops anyway, so it wasn't that far to go. So that's the conclusion of the presentation slides that we had prepared for you. And now I think I'll turn it over to Stephanie to start the question and answer period.
Thanks so much, Jane. Really appreciate it. Okay, just as a reminder, we're going to start the question and answer portion of the presentation now. If you would like to pose a question for Jane, please type it in the questions area of the GoToWebinar box, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen. And like I said, we'll get to all of them. We might run over our 1 hour time frame. You're more than welcome to stick around. We will try to get to all of the questions, and we'll just go one by one. Okay, Jane, the first question is, what is your proctor-to-student ratio for high-stakes exams versus low-stakes quizzes?
Okay, for the low-stakes quizzes, we generally deliver the low-stakes that are at home. We'll give them a take-home quiz. That's what we would consider a low-stakes, so they have no proctor. For the high-stakes, we generally have 2 proctors in a room. We have 80 students in our class. We have 2 people floating around. As I said, with 80 students in class, we really do have 80 exams. What we're watching for is that they're not using their cell phones. When you turn on the computer in ExamSoft, it shuts off your ability to access the internet or to go to any other screen on your computer other than soft test, which is the testing environment. So we know they're not going to get into anything through their computers. And then again, when they close down the computer, the screen goes this bright fluorescent yellow. We know they've closed the exam, so we feel pretty secure, very secure about that. So we feel comfortable with 2 proctors in the room for 80 students.
Great, thank you. The next question is, how did you structure the question categorization?
We structured it multi-levels, I will say. First of all, we wanted to track the Bloom's taxonomy, so we structured that. 3 levels of Bloom, so every question is categorized for Bloom's. Secondly, we have 35 Appendix B topics. Those are standards from our accrediting agency. So there were 35 major topics plus bullets under that. So we used that. We categorized to our accreditation standards. Then we categorized by system because we wanted body system in as well. So for us it was, cardio, respiratory, et cetera, renal. So we did system. It made sense for us. And then learning outcome. So at the course level, here's my course, here's the course number, here are the 7 learning outcomes, 8 learning outcomes. So we didn't require that of faculty. The faculty actually, some of them asked for that, and that was to do their research and to track what they were doing at the individual course level. But basic structure was Bloom's, accrediting standards, and our standards. So we have the 3 levels. And then again, I mentioned we added cumulative at the request of the faculty. They asked, can we have a cumulative bucket so that it's fair game for anybody to use? These are questions that are just students should know. So again, I would say the structure should come from what standards you would want to use to tell your story with data. For us, we wanted to tell our story of coverage of accreditation standards and coverage of our own learning outcomes. So as long as I have those captured and coded, that's where I'm going to start.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, my program uses rubrics for assessing students. Does ExamSoft work with rubrics, and can the same type of data be extracted from them?
Yes. What I'm really, really excited about, actually I was invited to a demonstration of the rubrics for ExamSoft just last week. They're not in there yet, but they will be in there. I think I've been told by the fall, and I'm really excited about using that. For example, and we administer our tests, our faculty do on iPads. I actually got iPads as gifts for our super users. I'm sorry if I'm planting a seed there, I shouldn't be, but I'm just sharing with you what we did. So our super users, we put iPads into their hands, and since then we've made a capital request to have iPads for all of our faculty. Here's my envision for the rubric. So as you're going around watching student presentations, you're going to pull up ExamSoft, have that rubric on your iPad. You're going to assign so many students to a work group. Let's say if 4 students are presenting some data, then and they're sharing the grade, then those 4 students, I'll check off on the rubric how they did, and the exams will go right into their scores, which, by the way, you can have them feed directly into Blackboard, which is our learning management system. So what I'm really excited about there is every component of the rubric, so every standard within the rubric you can code. So if we have a professionalism rubric, let's say, and part of the professionalism rubric is how they write emails to the faculty, for example. So I have a rubric on that. I can key that to professionalism, and it's going to populate my learning outcomes in my curriculum map for professionalism. So, or if they give a presentation on the renal system, I'm going to code each thing appropriately. So I'm going to use the categorizing the same way I would do for an exam. I'm really happy about that because, as you can imagine, rubrics are about performance assessment, whether it's performance of speaking or performance on a paper, or a counseling session. In our case, we use counseling sessions. Those are synthesis level, and I want to capture much more of the synthesis level because it's harder to get to that level in a typical exam.
Thank you, Jane. The next question is there a way to test for skills-based outcomes with this software?
The skill-based outcomes, and again, I think it's going to come from rubrics. Right now, it's your skills you're asking. Right now we're using essays, fill in the blanks, true and false, and multiple choice. What I'm really excited about is going into the skills base. We have counseling sessions with standardized patients, for example. I want to see their counseling skills. Every student is assessed using a rubric on those skills. So now if I code those skills appropriately and I put the categories into ExamSoft and I grade them on the rubric right on through ExamSoft, then I'm populating that curriculum back with those skills-based assessments. I think that's really rich data I'm excited about.
Great, thank you, Jane. The next question is, are the cardio or renal or all learning objectives knowledge or skills related?
Are they all knowledge or skills and or? So each of those skills would be broken down. For example, if I have, I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but you have questions or skills that are coded not just one way but multiple ways. So if I have, let's say in an exam, an existing exam right now, I'm going to put a case up there. So a 43-year-old patient presents with this, and the best prescription for her is. And that might be coded for diabetes, it might be coded for renal, it might be coded for Bloom's taxonomy at the application level, it may be coded. So I can have multiple levels of categories assigned to a single case. The more complex the case, the more likely is one that it's a synthesis question because I'm asking for them to pull in maybe other medications that the patient is on, you know, their height, weight, et cetera, and other complicating factors. So the more densely it's categorized, chances are it's a synthesis question. So it's not an either or. It can be at, I can ask a pharmacology question. It's coded as pharmacology, but it's related to the cardiovascular system. Or it's cardio and it's related to diabetes and it's related to, you know, respiratory. So I can have very rich coding within a single question. And that's how I get the synthesis level out of a traditional exam. I hope that answers the question they were after.
I think it did. Thanks, Jane. The next question is the quality of each question in the test bank evaluated, and can poor questions be removed from the bank, or to protect historical data, do the questions remain in the bank forever? If that is the case, can you separate the poor questions so they are not used in future testing?
Yes, yes, yes. Actually, I'm really glad you asked that question because about an hour before this webinar started, someone was in my office looking at the historical data on a question. The first time you put a question in, you get an individual question number, and it's attributed to you as the creator. That's one of the reasons why I have the faculty put their own questions in, because their name is on that as a creator. So now someone comes in and edits it and uses it again, it's going to keep the data from your question and how it was used, so all of the descriptive statistics will stay with you as you used it. If somebody uses it again, it's going to say, well, Jane edited that question on March 6th, and here's the resulting data from Jane's. So every time you have this question is edited, you can see one of the screenshots. On ExamSoft, you click on it, says History, Question History, and it will show you the historical record for how that particular question performed in all its edited versions. If it's no good, if you look at the point by serial, it's out of whack. If everything suggests, wow, I did this badly, you can retire the question entirely so it doesn't get used again. You can edit it and make it a better question if it was fundamentally good, but maybe you didn't like your distractors. So you can really change it. And this is happening now at a level it wasn't happening before when it wasn't computerized. Let me give you an example. We started a peer-reviewed test item process, which was born in our assessment committee. We said we're putting a lot of stakes on the data that's coming out, but the output is only as good as the input. So let's start really looking at those questions. We never looked at each other's exam questions before. So I had a veteran faculty volunteer to come up and start the process. Now she, in an hour, covered 13 of her questions. She said, yes, that was slow, but it was the first time, and we really took our time. She's been giving the exam for 6 years, using pretty much the same questions. And when she did this peer-reviewed test process where 3 of them looked at the question at the same time, she changed every single one of her 13 questions, which says to me that this is really, I was so flying high, because it's not about ego. It's not about saying I've written the best question that was ever come along. It's saying, can I improve it? Is there a way to make it a little bit more clear? Did I really get at what I wanted to know from the students? So yes, we are engaging in a peer-reviewed test process. We also, as part of our professional development, invited a psychometrician to come in and offer professional development to our faculty on how to write a psychometrically sound question. What are the things you should look for? I'm thinking of offering this again over the summer as we continue with the peer-reviewed test items, and actually maybe offering that at other campuses, because I think if you're going to put that much into the data that's coming out of this, you really want to look at the quality of what's going in. And there are simple things that we don't see. I know I never see my own grammatical errors or my own typo errors. There are typos in the slide that I'm seeing as I'm looking at it now, but you don't see your own, but when somebody's looking at it with you, I can see others, and I can say, hey, you know, that's not really clear to me. How can this be rephrased? So peer review of test items, I think, is critical. It's very valuable, and it's certainly an add-on to what we were doing before. So again, I'm all about the quality of the input so that we can get quality on the outcoming data.
Thanks, Jane. Next question is, does each question have to be individually typed, or can you download a test generator of questions into the bank?
Well, what you can do, I had actually one faculty member, actually my longest serving faculty member, and was the first one to upload an entire test bank. I think he uploaded 400 questions all at once. You have to put it in the right format, but then you can upload all of your questions at once. But then you're going to have to go in and tag them. But you can bulk edit. So one of the things, for example, if I'm writing 20 questions and I know they're all application, they're all renal, they're all pharmacology, they're all blah, 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 I can go in, click on those questions and edit them and tag them all at the same time. So not only can you upload all of your questions at once if you want to, but then you can bulk edit. But I really encourage people to be very thoughtful at looking at how they tag them, because if you don't categorize them properly, then again, your longitudinal data won't be very good. So, so when we do peer review of test item, one of the things we're looking at is, are the categories appropriate? That's important to do.
Thanks. Next question is, are students able to review individual exam items after the exam?
That's a faculty decision. So in other words, when you complete an exam and you've graded it, you can either send out that nice, easy chart that tells them the categories in red, green, and yellow, or you can send them out a more detailed report that says all of the categories and the question description and how they did on it. You can give them the right answer and the wrong answer. You can give them the right answer and their answer, or you can give them the actual test item. Our faculty choose not to give them the actual test item because they want to use the bank again and again, year after year, so they don't want the students sharing the questions. So you literally have a checklist, and you tell them, what do you want the students to see when they get the report? So do you want them to see the item? You check it off. You don't check it off. So it's very, very individualized. But our faculty got together and agreed they were not going to give out their test items. Instead, they give actually a more detailed report than what I showed you there. They give out the question description and the correct answer and the student answer. So then the students they kind of remember what it was, but we don't give out the test items.
And this is somewhat of a follow-up question, Jane. During the exam, can students review questions that were previously answered, or can they skip questions and go back to them?
Again, there's a great deal of autonomy built into the way this system works. So when you're launching an exam, you can choose to have the students have the ability to backwards navigate or not. So we allow it. The students can jump around, go backwards and forwards all they want. They also have the ability to change the font size. They have the ability to slide things around. They also have the ability to get a reminder. So if it's a 2-hour exam, the clock is going to go for 2 hours, right? So it actually gives you the option, do you want a reminder every 10 minutes or 15 minutes? And the students can opt to get that. They can highlight on the screen as they're crossing out multiple choice items. They can check off on they'll have a sidebar with the list of all the questions in the exam. So if they want to remember to go back to it, they can check it off and then go back and check it again and retest. Then they also have the option, and again, the faculty get to decide, do you want the students to get a reminder when they go to close the exam if they missed a question? So if you're jumping around, right, and you forget a question, you go to close the exam, it says, you didn't answer the 23rd question. Are you sure you want to close this exam? And the student says, no, I don't want to close, go back, answer question number 23. So again, the faculty can enable that or disable that function. All of these functions the faculty have control over. We leave them all open. We enable all of those helpful tools. I think the only time we wouldn't is if we were preparing them just as a practice board exam that doesn't allow backward navigation, just for them to get a sense of it. That's, I think, the only time we would disable those functions. But generally, we let them go back, forward, highlight, skip around, have reminders, give them, timing cues. We allow all of that.
Great, thank you, Jane. The next question is, do you utilize ExamSoft for OSCEs?
For OSCEs, well, right now we would do OSCEs with a rubric, and rubrics are currently not in ExamSoft. But come fall, yes. As soon as we have that rubric tool available to us, we are going to use it. We're going to use it for class presentations. We're going to use it for essays, or we have DI papers, drug information papers. So let's say I'm going to ask the students to upload a 10-page drug information paper, and I have a rubric in front of me. I will be able to grade it on the rubric, write in my comments, send the students back a report with my comments on it. By the way, we are doing that essays right now in ExamSoft, and you know what the faculty love? They're not reading student handwriting, and what the students love even more is they're not reading faculty handwriting on the comments, because in my humble experience, the faculty handwriting is worse than the student's handwriting.
Hey Jane, this is Ken. I just want to chime in on that answer as well. In addition to the rubrics coming in the fall, we've also have an iPad solution that will be released here in the next month or two, and that also enables you to follow somebody around during the OSCE process with your with the iPad in your hands and actually doing the rubric grading as well. So the two of those combined together are going to provide a pretty powerful solution.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Ken. We're really excited about it. And frankly, right now, when I'm in the classroom monitoring an exam, I do it on my iPad, because you can do that now. In other words, I'm monitoring. I can tell when the students are finishing the exam and how they're uploading and everything. I know what percentage is done when. So I'm using the iPad for that now, so it's really good to know that the rubrics will have that functionality, because I love walking around the room, and that's really cool.
Thanks, Jane. The next question I'm actually going to let Ken Knotts answer. He is the Director of Marketing here for ExamSoft. The question is, how many professional programs have adopted ExamSoft nationwide?
So we have over 400 clients in total, of which I would probably say 320 plus are professional programs that are specifically focused on either health sciences and or law schools. So we've got a significant footprint there. And we see that growing every day, both within pharmacy programs like Jane's, and then also across nursing programs, dental, and veterinary as well.
I've presented at different types of schools and at business schools as well. I can really see applications for, and particularly once the rubrics are added, the applications for this is pretty extensive.
Thanks so much. The next question is, how can you identify when the question was last used and how many times it was used?
When you look at the item history, if you click on the question itself, you can look at, there are tabs across the top, and one would say what categories it's in, and then one of the tabs says history. So you will be able to see the history of that question and see the date that it was edited, the date that was used. So there is a history tab that you can look at the question data by that tab.
Great, thank you. We've only got time for a couple of more questions. I'm going to pose maybe 2 more questions to Jane, and then we're probably going to run out of time. I am getting a lot of questions from folks who have maybe come in a little bit late on the webinar. Yes, both the presentation itself and the slide deck will be emailed out tomorrow to everybody who has registered for the webinar. So if you missed the first part, or if you'd like to be able to share it with others, yes, you will get a copy of both the presentation itself as well as the recording of the webinar. Okay, Jane, the next question is, can this software be used in conjunction with online courses using the Blackboard course management system?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You can use Blackboard to populate the courses in ExamSoft, and you can have the grades from ExamSoft populate into Blackboard. Blackboard is what we have here. Yes.
Perfect, thanks. Next question is, can this software determine the validity and reliability of an exam or exam question?
We do different things to check the validity and the reliability. One of the ways is doing the peer review test items. The reliability we look at as over time, as the questions are repeated with different populations, we'll look at if it's hitting the target as we expect it to. And to check both validity and reliability, we're engaging right now with other institutions like us, where we're sharing. We're in the process of doing this now and hope to have scholarship published next year on this. We're doing across campuses, sharing test bank items. So if our faculty are giving test bank items to faculty at another university and they're giving us some of theirs, we're checking the reliability of the coding, the reliability, the validity of the coverage of what we expect we're covering. So that, I like that we're doing some internal checks on reliability and validity, but I'm very excited about doing external reviews. The other way we do it is if I look at the longitudinal data from our, because of our coding is matched to accreditation standards, our students take a standardized test in their 3rd year based on accreditation standards. So if I look at the external data from our 3rd year exam that is a nationally normed exam, and I compare it to how our students are doing in those same subject areas internally, then I'm doing a check that way. I like the internal external, so that's a standardized national exam versus our internal exam. I'm very excited about doing that reliability and validity check as well. So I think there's a lot of options. The reason for the coding, I've developed a coding system for the pharmacy curriculum for both Appendix C, D, and B, C, and D, and I've been sharing it, and it's been put on the organization, professional organization website. I'm encouraging people to adopt it because if we all use the same coding system, then we can share questions across institutions and check reliability and validity, which I think is very important. Again, the quality of your data that comes out of it is only good as the input. So obviously quality check is very important to us.
Okay, last question that we're going to be able to have time for today is, what is the bandwidth needed for this program?
Well, I'm going to let Ken go there because we don't host this. It's on their server. It doesn't touch our server. So, Ken, do you know how to answer that question?
Absolutely, Jen. Thanks for handing it off to me. The bandwidth is minimal. So the The entire solution is hosted, so the question banking, the exam, send the exams out to students, and the uploading of the exams is all done via our servers. It's a minimal sort of impact on wireless when you're uploading and downloading. The only time you may encounter some constraints are if you have a class of 100, 200 students, all of whom are trying to use the same wireless connection to upload their exams at once. You may see slow upload times, and in that case, we tell students upload right after the exam. Wait a minute or two. Some professors let their students upload the exams within an hour of taking the exam. But the bandwidth question also highlights one of the big attributes of our software is that the exams are actually delivered offline on the laptop. So at the time of the exam, whether you're using a laptop or using an iPad, we disable wireless so that during the exam, nobody is actually touching the internet for two reasons. One, it provides a much higher level of security, and two, it eliminates the issues that have typically been experienced with browser-based exams where you lose connectivity or it's a timed exam and the transition between one question to another takes a long time. So during the exam, all the exams are given offline. The student downloads the exam in advance of exam day to their laptop or to their iPad. It's encrypted. At the time of the exam, the professor gives out a password which is unique to that exam and releases that exam to the student. They take the exam, after which time the exam re-encrypts itself. The password is no longer valid, and the next time the student connects to the internet, that exam is uploaded. So the bandwidth requirements are only at exams, only when you're uploading or downloading the exam, either before or afterwards. Otherwise, it is absolutely minimal. And we also have the ability to deliver video, audio, massively sized images, all of which are downloaded in advance. So again, you're not having to rely on the internet during the exam.
Thank you, Ken. And I want to say how we handle this here is our faculty release their exams to the students 2 days before the exam. We try to do it 48 hours in advance. The students get a notice, hey, you have an exam to download. They download it at home most of the time. If we are using it in a computer lab, that's the only time they would do it. And we've had 30 at a time in a computer lab, and that's been no problem. But for the most part, the students download the exam on their own time. They come in, as Ken said, they have it sitting on their computer. They get a password. They open it up, and we give them till like 6 o'clock that night. Frankly, I say to the faculty, unless you're going to grade it right away, which most of them at least take a day, just give them to that night. That way, if they go to work after, they don't have time to, if for God help us, if our internet went down and they couldn't upload it, so what? Let them get home, they'll upload it. It's not like they can get into the exam again. Once it's closed, it's closed. And then the exam is uploaded and they have all the information.
Great. Thank you so much, Jane, and thank you to everybody who was able to attend today and has stuck with us. This has been a great webinar. Well, lots of really engaging questions. I apologize. There were a couple of questions that we didn't get to, but we need to close out now. Otherwise, we're going to get cut off by GoToWebinar. So if you do have questions that you had posed that were not answered today, we will be reaching out to you individually by email to get answers to you. Also, just to let everybody know, again, we will be sending out an email to everyone who registered that will have a copy of the presentation deck as well as a recorded copy of the webinar itself. Again, thank you, Jane, for being here to present not only your own material but also Mr. Chad's, and thank you to everybody who took time out of your day to attend and listen. Thank you so much. Have a great day.